Muffin arrived at the school later than the others. She was undergoing a challenging course of treatment. For several years, was homeschooled. By this time, the children at the school had managed to become friends. The class developed their relationship, and the first love couples appeared. Brian was in love with Emma and sometimes walked her home. Paul was inseparable from Anna. Steve spent a long time unsuccessfully courting the class's top hottie, Sophia. However, all the boys loved Sophia, even from other classes. She was beautiful, blonde, with green eyes. Sophia was not very successful in her studies, although she was very successful with the boys. She was the recognized queen of the class. On that day, 2 students, Muffin and Fred Crane, came to the school. Fred immediately attracted the attention of the entire class. A humble guy with dark hair and a friendly smile, whom both teachers and girls and even boys liked. He was well-versed in all the lessons, was polite, friendly, and did not participate in conflicts. He treated all warmly and affably. Surprisingly, he did not pay much attention to the beautiful Sophia. The queen of the class is accustomed to the increased awareness of boys. She wondered why the new Fred was friendly to Lisa, Stephanie, and Judy. He treated Sophia like everyone else, warm, kind, and nothing more. In the beginning, Muffin didn't even attract the students' attention. Everyone was busy discussing Fred's appearance and preparing for Stephanie's party. Muffin was sitting next to Fred. 2 new students sat together, but did not pay attention to each other. It is not surprising that no one remembered Muffin. No one knew her name, although teachers approached her. A lumbering body, fat legs, thick cheeks, and colorless hair. That's what the new girl looks like. She didn't bother anyone, answered the teacher's questions, and didn't talk to anyone. The nickname, Muffin, stuck to her at once. No one remembered that the colorless girl was called Heather. She did not interest anyone. Soon it turned out that Heather had unpleasant breathing. When she was anxious or rushing, she began to breathe unnaturally. The girl put a tube in her mouth during the attack, restoring her breath. This caused her to be squeamish. She was called a muffin because of her loose body and plump face. At first, everyone was indifferent to her. Her classmates simply did not notice her. The situation escalated when it became clear that Fred was sympathetic to Heather. No, he was not in love with her. It was impossible to fall in love with a loose, colorless creature with unpleasant breath. But he treated her well. The girl could easily share her school supplies if Fred didn't hear the assignment. Some topics that Heather didn't understand, Fred could explain to her. It wasn't friendship, but relations with her desk mates were good. The beginning of the feud was Sophia. A pretty girl in the class could not forgive an ordinary girl for the attention of a good guy. One day, Sophia offered Fred to sit next to her in class, but the guy refused. He politely replied that he had arranged with Heather to do a joint project. Beauty harbored evil. From that moment on, Heather was no longer just an unremarkable girl. She became the true enemy of the class queen. You can't say that Sophia was madly in love with Fred, but the friendly guy turned out to be inaccessible to her. He was not under the spell of the beauty. He communicated with Sophia just as he talked to Stephanie, Anna, Emma, and even Muffin. One day, the first unpleasant situation occurred. That day, Sophia was in a perfect mood. She was wearing a bright red sweater and blue jeans. These clothes suited the girl very much. The beauty had a good mood. On this day, she was in the mood to joke about Heather. "What is it?" said Sophia, and she poked Heather's backpack with a delicate finger. The girl looked timidly at the queen of the class. She did not understand what the angry beauty wanted from her. Sophia squeamishly poked her knapsack with her fingernail. "It's mud," she said, ringing and laughing. The other guys were laughing too. "That's not dirt," said Heather quietly. "There you go, Mud. It's like dough." Sophia kept laughing. Her beautiful eyes were shining. The laughter was ringing. At that point, she was more beautiful than usual. "Bread dough." Steve laughed angrily. Everyone liked the joke so much that laughter filled the audience. Heather became worried and began to breathe heavily. She was depressed and hurt. Fred did not laugh with everyone, but did not stand up for the girl. When Heather began to suffocate, Sophia began to intimidate her. She stuck out her tongue and began to breathe loudly. The guys started to laugh even more. "Dough for Muffin! Dough for Muffin!" said Steve. The other guys started shouting that phrase too. Fred got a little confused. He was uncomfortable with the situation. Fred felt terrible for Bread, but could not stand up to the whole class. He thought he should have supported the poor girl, but he didn't know how to help her. Fred was scattered over the books on his desk. The girl got better. Soon the lessons began. Fred couldn't concentrate on the task. He thought Heather was mad at him. "She'll probably never talk to me again," the guy thought. He didn't know if it was good or bad. Sometimes he regretted getting so close to Muffin. Befriending an outcast girl robbed him of many joys. But he couldn't break up with her. Somehow she touched his heart. Muffin was very different from the other girls of that age. She was kind and understanding. She made him feel comfortable. Like the other boys at school, Fred liked Sophia very much, but something about Heather made her tender and made him want to take care of her. He didn't want to take care of Sophia. Fred sat the whole lesson and did not look at Heather, but at the end of the study, he felt her hand touch his elbow. "Fred, I've lost my pencil. Can you give me yours?" Heather whispered. A wave of relief came over Fred. He was happy that the girl had found a reason to talk to him. He gladly gave her a pencil and crossed her eyes. Heather was smiling. He wanted so much to do something for her, and soon he had an opportunity to do something good for her. Unfortunately, good intentions have come to naught. There was a lot of talk in class about Stephanie's party. A classmate was gathering guests at her house for the weekend. Her parents left town and let her daughter call her friends. Stephanie gave everyone a bright invitation card. Muffin and Fred got invited too. Heather was holding a colorful card. Fred heard the girl sigh. "Do you want to go?" he asked the neighbor with a smile. "No, of course," said Heather sadly. "Why?" said Fred. In his head, he scolded himself for asking. He understood that the gentle, shy girl with her appearance should not have come to the party. There were going Sophia, Emma, and Anna. These are real sharks that could hurt vulnerable Heather. At the same time, Fred understood how much she wanted to have fun. After all, this has never happened in her life. Perhaps she wanted to wear a beautiful dress and have fun with friends. She just did not have any good friends, and she deserved fun and some friends. "Come with me," Fred asked the girl, looking into her eyes. Heather's cheeks were covered with blush. She looked at the boy with huge, colorless eyes, with wonder and hope. At that moment, she was almost beautiful, but after a second, the hope in her eyes disappeared. The girl mentally returned to reality. "Thanks, Fred. I'm not going," said Heather, pretending to read. The boy felt a strong desire to make the girl happy. He thought that if Heather came to this party, the guys would see her qualities. They would appreciate her kindness and sincerity. He determined to help Heather. "You're coming with me, and it's out of the question," said Fred firmly. And then he added, "I want you to wear the most beautiful dress. Do you have one?" "Yes, actually," said Heather with a happy smile. Sometimes she was invited to holidays, but when she refused, no one insisted or talked her into it. On that day, Stephanie Adams' house was full of young guests. Loud music was playing. Sophia came in a bright green dress. It was very shining in her emerald eyes. The figure of the girl was great. The guys looked at her shapes with lust, but she did not pay attention to anyone. Sophia had a clear plan to get close to Fred. She was sure that the obstacle to their love was Heather. He spent so much time with an unattractive, ugly, pity girl from a pitiful school. There was simply no way to communicate with Fred without her in class. Today is a great chance because there will be no ugly Muffin next to him, thought Sophia. She was beautiful today. Sophia was sure that Fred would come. He was a little late. The guys were all gathered and making a lot of noise. Sophia looked at the door. She was waiting for Fred. No one was expecting what happened next. Amid the fun, Fred entered the house. He was wearing a suit that suited him very well. He was holding Heather's hand. All the guys looked at the strange couple with surprise. The Muffin looked strange. The dress was beautiful, but not very good for a total girl. The makeup was not on her. Her hair was neat and attractive, but colorless. Heather smiled affably. Her smile was timid. Stephanie was surprised but invited the guests to join the company. The first half hour was good. Everyone continued to do their business. At first, no one noticed the queen of Sophia's class was in a bad mood. Fred never left her side, serving her drinks and sandwiches. He even tried to involve a shy girl in the conversation. It was time to dance. Fred was going to invite Heather, but Sophia was cleverly ahead of him. She went up to the guy and asked him to dance. Heather nodded timidly. The whole dance, Sophia snuggled up to the boy. He liked her. He didn't want to turn into a timid admirer of the entourage of the recognized queen. Fred mentally noted how beautiful Sophia was today. She was so temptingly snuggled up to him. He did not notice that the dance was over and the next song began. In the second slow song, he danced with beautiful Sophia. At the end of the second dance, he thought he did not want to return to Heather. He even regretted taking her with him on such a day. She prevented him from having fun with her presence. He could dance and have fun with the beautiful Sophia. Instead, he had to take care of Heather. Fred apologized to Sophia and went to Heather. Steve approached the beauty. He had long been in love with Sophia, but resentful, Sophia pushed the guy away. "Can't you see that your Fred is stuck to Muffin? He doesn't want you," he said to Sophia. This was the humiliation the girl could not stand. Sophia jumped up to Heather and yanked her arm, screaming, "Why did you come to this party? You were not expected here. You are an ugly, stupid creature." All the guys began to look at what would happen next. Heather looked at the furious beauty. Sophia continued, "You're ruining everyone's life. Scary people like you should stay at home and not go to cool parties." Heather got excited. She started to breathe heavily. Fred helped her take the medication to help her live. He gave her the tube. All the guys were looking at him. He didn't know what to do. He couldn't respond to Sophia rudely. He didn't want to take care of Heather anymore. She was really in his way. She was a stranger at the party. But Fred wasn't mad at himself for bringing a girl with him. He was angry with her. She was breathing so severely, her ugliness didn't even save a beautiful dress. Heather's breath was back to normal. What happened next surprised everyone. Heather got up, looked at everyone with colorless eyes, and said quietly, "You're all evil, cruel people here. I came here only because of Fred. He is the only kind and noble man among you. I will leave, and he will leave with me. I am happy at your school because I met this guy. He is not like you. When we graduate, he will be married and have many beautiful, intelligent, kind children." At first, they listened to her in silence, but at the end of her speech there was laughter. Sophia burst out. Her laughter was loud and contagious. Then Steve and Stephanie and the other guys started laughing. Fred was silent. The guys weren't just laughing at Heather, they were teasing him too. They mocked him because of Muffin. Fred jumped up and yelled at Heather, "Shut up! Shut up! You are a stupid, disgusting creature. Shut up! I only brought you here because I felt sorry for you. Look at you. You're ugly and stupid." Heather fell silent in fear. Then her breathing became uneven again. She was helping herself breathe the drug, but it was no longer helping. The girl began to suffocate. At first, everyone laughed at her situation. The shortness of breath of a fat girl looked funny. Someone even mimicked her. Emma was the first to notice that Heather had become quite ill. She called the ambulance. An emergency came quickly, but the girl was already unconscious. Heather was taken away to hospital. No one knew what happened next with Heather. The next day, she didn't come to school. She didn't go to school with the guys anymore. No one even talked about Muffin anymore. It became taboo. All the guys understood they were involved in something terrible. The years passed, and everyone slowly forgot about the colorless girl. Fred and Sophia became a couple. After graduation, they married. Sophia was a demanding girl, and her young husband did not have enough money for her desires. She constantly talked about him finding a job. The relationship between the couple was not always perfect. The young wife was scandalous and capricious. Soon, Sophia came home with flaming eyes. The prestigious company was recruiting young employees. Sophia forced Fred to submit his resume. The girl sent her resume too. Working in a prestigious company was very well paid. If they could both get a job at the office of this organization, they could buy a house right away. Unfortunately, no one replied to their CVs. Sophia wrote letters to the organization, but the company sent them a polite refusal. After a month, a persistent girl still managed to get a meeting with the head of the company. Sophia was convinced that she and Fred were skilled professionals. She believed that ordinary people were mistakenly refusing them. At the interview, Sophia and Fred came together. The organization was located in a beautiful building with modern renovations. The guys were taken to a luxurious office to the head. A beautiful young woman in an elegant costume offered Fred and Sophia a gesture to sit down. Something subtly familiar was on her face. "My name is Heather Donnelly. I am listening to you," said the lady. The name also seemed familiar to the guys. Sophia immediately presented the documents and began to tell the company director about their capabilities. She spoke for herself and her husband. Fred was silent. Sophia said a lot. Heather Donnelly listened to her attentively. "Why are you so silent?" said Fred's lady with a smile. With that smile, she turned everything upside down on him. He recognized Muffin. But how did she change? She became subtle, graceful. It was an impossible change for her. The face was hers, but at the same time completely different. She had a lovely look with expressive blue eyes. Her hair was blonde in a sharp bundle. Fred was struggling to breathe. Heather Donnelly asked anxiously, "Are you all right, Mr. Crane? Are you having trouble breathing? Should I call our doctor?" Fred shook his head negatively. His breathing was still heavy. Sophia was displeased that her husband looked so ridiculous at the time. "I had an asthma medication with me years ago, but I don't need it anymore. So if it's hard for you, I can call our doctor. Unfortunately, I don't have any medicine with me," the manager continued. Fred refused help. He was distraught. He remembered everything. He remembered the naive, ugly Muffin. He remembered how Sophia was torturing her. He remembered betraying a quiet, humble girl. "Heather," he whispered. The wife glanced at Fred angrily, and at that moment, she also got struck. Sophia's face turned red. "Muffin," she whispered. Heather smiled with restraint. "Yes, we know each other, and now, unfortunately, we do not need specialists for your profile. Our staff is already sufficiently staffed. We hired employees with higher qualifications, but you were so persistent, I can only offer you a position of service staff, but I think you will decline." Sophia's eyes flashed with anger. "Of course we won't take it," she roared. She was a qualified professional. Heather dared offer her the role of a maid, cleaner, or dishwasher. Sophia jumped out of her chair and ran to the exit. She gestured to Fred. Before leaving, Fred met Heather's light blue eyes. Her gaze expressed pity. There was no past resentment or anger in that look. But there was no longer the trust that Fred had in her many years ago. She forgave the betrayal. Fred was struck with terrible remorse. The couple was driving home in a taxi. Sophia hissed angrily at her husband. She was furious that a former classmate had done this to them. She was even angrier that Muffin had become successful and beautiful. She even thought that Fred's feelings for Heather had been awakened. And Fred rode in silence. His soul was tormented with remorse. He saw and remembered those blue eyes. He knew he would never forget them again. And Fred knew he'd never be able to look at his wife with love again.